Hi, see this ring? This is the ring that my wife Nancy put on my finger when we were married 10 years ago. This is titanium, a strong and lightweight metal, but there are different grades of it. There's a very good reason why our wedding bands are not the highest grade and why the highest grade titanium has helped to spawn some of the biggest machines in the world. Hi, I'm Jim Riley. Welcome to Jim's Friday Freakout. And tonight we're looking at biggest man-made. The Guinness Book of World Records was not harmed or even consulted in the making of this segment. So, if you hear Belaz 75710, doesn't that sound like something that's a zip code in Hollywood somewhere? But actually, that is the name of the biggest truck in the world. However, the zip code idea is not really that far off because the truck is so enormous, it's practically the size of a municipality. Belaz is the name of a company in Belarus who created this gigantic truck. It is over 60 feet long, over 30 feet high, and it has two 2,300 horsepower engines that convert their mechanical energy into alternating current to drive the wheels. This is a dump truck that can carry 496 tons. And that's their kind of tons, which are actually about 10% more than US tons. So that is one gigantic truck. This is a truck that knocked the Caterpillar 797F off of the spot as the biggest truck in the world. But Reddit actually has this one on I don't know if you've ever looked at Reddit. It's a website where people can post opinions and thoughts and blogs and stories. There is a subreddit just dedicated to vehicles with stairs. And the Belaz 75710 is one of the most heavily featured items. So many people can stand on the stairs leading up to the cab of this truck. It's absolutely enormous. Somebody marked that it's perfect for a zombie apocalypse, but I'd actually have to doubt that a little bit because this is a truck that can only go 64 kilometers per hour. That's less than 40 miles an hour. But having said that, in defense of the American contribution, the CAT 797F is still the world's largest mechanical truck. That is to say, where the power is transferred from the engine to the wheels by mechanical means, not electrical means. It was actually voted recently by the Illinois Manufacturers Association as the coolest thing made in Illinois, and I absolutely agree with that assessment. So, if you ever want to drop $6 million on a vehicle, don't buy it from the country where the leader recently dissolved the parliament. Go to Decatur, Illinois, and buy US made. Back in 2018, they just made the 1,000th one of this amazing, enormous truck. Oil rigs. It's really not so straightforward. How do you measure what is the biggest oil rig? Is it the height above the seabed? The height above the waterline? Its capacity for pumping oil? The size of the deck where all the work takes place? Well, let's just look at plain old height from the top to the bottom, and in that category, the Magnolia Extended Tension Leg Platform, which operates in the Gulf of Mexico, is the tallest from bottom to top, 4,698 feet. Now, a lot of that is steel tethers that connect its rigid legs down to the seabed where it's held by anchors, but still, the height of this whole structure dwarfs the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa. It's a project that began production. It actually started pumping oil in 2004. Now, remember, that was a year before Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina, we've heard about all the horrible things that it did to the Gulf Coast and to New Orleans, but it creamed a lot of the offshore production. I read in what I think is a reliable source, Industrial Safety and Hygiene News, that 100 drilling platforms were destroyed by Hurricane Katrina, but the Magnolia wasn't. So that must make the people who came with up with that idea of putting it on tethers feel just great. Solar array. Okay, I'm going to get these pronunciations right. The Huanghe Hydropower Development in the desert region in the northwestern Chinese province of Qinghai. And by the way, you can look up the pronunciation of words from other languages just by typing it in on YouTube, and somebody there will say it for you the right way, or at least I'm hoping they do, in the province of Qinghai. Now, this was as of a list that I found from October of 2020, just a few months ago. But the thing you have to realize is that when it comes to largest solar development, it is a moving target. I looked at a 10 largest list from 2019, and it didn't even mention the project in Qinghai. That list had the biggest at 580 megawatts of energy. This new project done by Huanghe is $2.2 gigawatts. Now, you think about this. First of all, it's amazing that this can be in a remote province of China. China has 1.4 billion people in it. How can there possibly be a remote province anywhere in that most densely populated country, or most highly populated country anyway? But there is. And so the challenge was, how do they get the power from there to where they need it? Because the previous year, that province, Shanghai, had met their needs for electricity with solar for 15 days straight. So they certainly didn't need a 2.2 gigawatt project coming online to meet their needs. So what they did was they created an enormous 1,000-mile-long transmission line to get that power to the more populous parts of the country. Presses. But this isn't something you've thought much about. Hydraulic presses. Now they're needed to shape metals like titanium, magnesium, aluminum. You can't smack on them the way you can with steel. You can't use a hammer press the way you can with iron or steel, because these are metals that fracture. However, they're enormously valuable because they're strong and lightweight. So people had to figure out a different way to work with them. And what they came up with was a hydraulic press that will press them into a mold to make them into a shape that you want under absolutely titanic amounts of weight. Now, for the story of hydraulic presses, we have to go all the way back to the time between World War I and World War II. Germany, as part of the settlement after World War I, had its iron regions taken away from it, but they still had plenty of magnesium. They discovered you can't smack on magnesium the way you can with iron or steel to form it into a shape. So they came up with an enormous 33,000-ton hydraulic press, plus two smaller 16,500-ton presses. These were instrumental in creating the German jet aircraft, which were the wonder of the world when they came out at the end of World War II. So when the war ended and the Nazis lost, we got the two smaller presses, but the Soviets grabbed that bigger one. So we launched what was called the Heavy Press Program. And within a few years, in 1955, we created a 50,000-ton hydraulic press. It's played a huge role in the development of our aircraft industry. There's a website called Gasparini.com. I'm not exactly sure what it's about. I've never seen it before, but there was a great quote on there. To dominate the world, you have to dominate the skies, but to dominate the skies, you first have to dominate the metal. So that's what we had set out to do with this press in Pittsburgh, and then there was another matching one created shortly after that in Massachusetts with this enormous 50,000-ton capacity. So this brings us back to, why is this wonderful titanium wedding ring, and this is an aircraft metal, not aircraft grade? Well, for this I had to turn to justmensrings.com, which taught me the following. Aircraft grade titanium sets permanently. It can't be repaired, engraved, resized, or cut off by standard tools in an emergency situation. That is not something you want your wedding ring made out of. So thank you, whoever made this, for not making this titanium aircraft grade. But for aircraft grade titanium, you need these gigantic presses, and not to mention these other metals, aluminum, magnesium. So the 50,000 tonner that I was talking about, both of them actually, are still in operation. They recently had to be retrofit because there were cracks in the basement. A little more on that in a moment. But with their retrofits, they're expected to be in service for another 50 years. So shortly after we got these babies online in 1955, the Soviets outdid us with a 75,000-ton hydraulic press, which was 35 meters tall, and 22 meters of that were under the floor. These things are unbelievable engineering achievements. And now, more recently, in 2013, the Chinese have surpassed both with an 80,000-ton hydraulic press. Now, what has to be said about that is that there are actually not any pictures of it because it's considered confidential. Pretty sure they're using it for their military aircraft program. But the couple things we do know about it is that it was based on sort of older Soviet models, so it's probably not a technological advance, it's just bigger. And sources report it's a little bit underused because a lot of what it does can be done just as well with the other slightly smaller presses elsewhere in the world, including the United States. But the interesting thing was they're keeping this thing so confidential that when there was an article about it in the Wall Street Journal, the picture in the Wall Street Journal was a picture of a picture in a Chinese newspaper. The Wall Street Journal reporter wasn't even allowed in to take a picture of the doggone thing. So this is what I want to know. When you look at these things and their immense power and the various components that compose them, does anybody know if these were part of the inspiration for the design of the machines in the Matrix movies? Especially in the Battle of Zion scene in the second or third film? If you know, please let me know in the comments below if hydraulic presses inspired the design of the Matrix. Or let us know in our Facebook group at James Michael Riley Studios. Okay, ships. Have you ever heard of the Seawise Giant? I hadn't. And for the life of me, I don't know why. It is the biggest ship ever made. 564,000 tons. It was 1,500 feet long. This was a Japanese-built supertanker, carried oil. It was so big it couldn't navigate the English Channel. Now, I don't have enough information to really even understand what that means. But for this thing to go from full speed to a complete stop took 5 miles. The propeller weighed 50 tons. And here's the most amazing thing where I cannot believe I've never heard of the Seawise Giant, or its later name, the Happy Giant. Why Happy Giant? Because less than 10 years after it was put into service in 1979, in the Iran-Iraq War, in the Strait of Hormuz, it was sunk. And then it was refloated and fixed, and it served another 21 years. It later had the name Knock Nevis, which I guess maybe means something in some Scandinavian language. It belonged to a Scandinavian firm. But also, as I said, the Happy Giant. And it ended its life in 2009 on the coast of India. You may not know this, but a lot of large ships, after they reach the end of their life, are sailed to India and Bangladesh, where they're run up on the beach. And thousands of people swarm all over them in extremely dangerous, often toxic work, turning them into scrap. So that is where the Happy Giant ended its life. So just as a couple of final thoughts, this ship category, among everything I've talked to you about tonight, is unique because it's the only item on the list where the world's biggest is no longer with us. I think we're lucky to live in a world where the largest is constantly updated. I mean, you look at a list in almost any category of 10 biggest, you better make sure you got a current list or you're going to have outdated information. So it's exciting to know that the future is bigger than the past. So I want to thank so many sources for this show: miningtechnology.com, worldsteel.org, NES Furcroft, it's a British company, geology.com, McDermott.com, PV Magazine, that's Photovoltaic Magazine, Gasparini.com, check it out, good writer there, the Daily Mail, that's a UK newspaper, and JustMen'sRings.com. Thanks for joining us for Jim's Friday Freakout. Good night.